Knowledge is power. If people know and if they understand and they have knowledge, they are in control. If we, as scientists, and if medicine is science, then we should not base our conclusions on beliefs, not on thoughts, only on knowledge. It is time to Darwinize that medicine, that paramedicine, convert medicine and paramedicine in epistemology, the science of knowledge. We have to start thinking about age-related medicine, but not to prolong life, no, to have high quality of life. People live 83, 84 years as their average life expectancy. And the question should be, why those people reach that incredible age? And if we look to medicine, then we see that medicine is not based on quality of life. Medicine is based on life expectancy. Chronic disease is an accelerated aging process that we have to look for natural interventions which have anti-aging effect. We need interventions which perhaps we can rob from evolutionary biology. The knowledge of evolutionary biology can help us to provide a very high quality of life in people who reach 80, 85, 90 years. Everybody is always talking about how can we live forever. But that should not be the question. The question should be, how can we reach our programmed life expectancy in the nicest way? Those elder people who live exactly in the same environment as we do, but they stay healthy. What is their secret? They keep social active. That they don't overeat. They keep moving. They are not sedentary. A lot of people, they suffer from the fear of death. People of 90, 95 years old who age with a high quality of life, they're not afraid of the death. And when you ask them, why you're not afraid of the death, then the answer is, because I am satisfied. I reached my purpose of life. But you can only reach that point if your health produces the liberty of conceiving and reaching the purpose of life.
Leo, fantastic to have you on Speaking Naturally. We're going to have a really interesting conversation. I don't think you ever engage in conversations that are not interesting. So can we just kick off, Leo, by just you giving a little bit of your background, where you come from, because we're going to be looking at from a PNI psychoneuroimmunology perspective, but love to have a little bit of background to kick off.
Okay, so thanks, Robert. I think it's going to be a real interesting conversation. I hope it's going to be a discussion, because that's nicer. Exactly. A little bit conflictive discussion. That would be the good thing. So my background is, I'm Dr Pruimboom. I have a PhD in clinical psychoneuroimmunology and evolutionary medicine. My background is, I'm a medical physiologist and biochemist. I also studied physiotherapy. I have 4 kids. And this year in March, we will celebrate 35 years of the origin of clinical psychoneuroimmunology, not psychoneuroimmunology, because that's not ours, but the clinical part is. And we have only one purpose, I think, with that is make that science, which is a philosophy. It's not a therapy. It's a science. It's a philosophy, basic to all medical and paramedical disciplines. So that's the only purpose we have. Very small, not at all ambitious, and that's.
Leo, just let's start with that. So obviously, when you bring together the notion of clinical with psychoneuroimmunology, you're bringing together three super systems in the body. How does that change perspective on human beings and health compared with, say, a siloed mainstream lens, or even perhaps a holistic alternative lens, you know, whether it's through traditional systems or more recent modalities of alternative medicine? How does that change the perspective?
Look, obviously it's called psychoneuroimmunology, and that's the only reason for that is that we had to make it short. But the reality is it's psychoneuroendocrino socio metabolo immunology, which connects the 6 big systems, which communicate at every level in the human body and with the environment. So,
and it also, you have a very strong recognition of the importance of evolution, evolutionary biology perspective as well, don't you?
Obviously, without evolutionary view, it's very difficult to understand the proximate problems of us, of plants, of whatever animal. So if you only look at health and disease through a proximate view, you miss so many details. And I'm calling them details to not exaggerate, but those details, they determine the way we cope with the modern environment, the modern life, which is not the best life Homo sapiens ever lived.
We're going to get into that. I want to start with a really basic question, and I posed this to a group of 150 or so practitioners a few weeks ago, and had people scratching their head. And it's an interesting idea to get a perspective on what life is. We know that living systems tend to be wet and squelchy. We know that they have nucleic acids that have turned into very elaborate patterns that contain genetic information. We also understand the differences between mobile genetic elements and viruses that contain the genetic elements, but then rely on an organism for replication. So when we think about what life is, from your perspective, what the hell is life, Leo?
I don't doubt about my answer. So life is energy. That's why I always say it's all about energy. If you look at the probability of how life started, it definitely did not. It can never have started on Earth on its own. It was impossible. If you look to the abiotic environment before organisms were developed, then you see that there is an enormous amount of elements which have never been on Earth.
Yeah.
And for me, they have been raining out of the universe.
Absolutely.
I know there is a hypothesis about sperma raining out of the universe, but that's not necessary to explain how life started.
Of course that doesn't actually deal with origin. It just deals with the distribution of these components that turned into life.
Exactly.
And I mean, you and I, we grew up in the same era, and obviously we were sort of taught about this primordial soup model, and the nucleic acids sort of magically came together. And like you, I've also drifted a long way away from that many years ago. But when you come, so I love the fact that you're talking about energy, and of course you're not just talking about energy in terms of metabolic energy. Just talk to me more about what you mean by energy, and applying that to the origins of life, how we start to get this stardust turning into an active system that becomes then a metabolic system.
If you look at interaction between cells, if you look at the cell, just whatever cell of a plant, of whatever, and you take the nucleus of the cell out and you put whatever other nucleus in it, it can be a cancerous nucleus or a nucleus from whatever organism with some kind of disease. So something which has been disturbed. If the energy producing, let's say, organelles or perhaps micro RNA molecules are intact, there is no disturbance afterwards. The cell can divide, and what comes out, 2 completely healthy cells. So you cannot say that life is based on genes. That's impossible. Because if that would be the case, then manipulating genes, things should change. But they don't need to change at all if energy is in order. But then you have to look at the word energy in a very broad perspective. Energy is about communication. Yeah. It's nothing else than communication. And if things communicate with each other, there is always an energetic benefit. Yeah. And that benefit, that communication, has to have been relevant to the origin of life. I know that you're going to ask me about ET.
Well, you've indirectly already mentioned it to a degree, but yes, I mean, extraterrestrial origins obviously seem to be pretty much a fairly sort of normal conversation in evolutionary biology now, just for the reason that you mentioned, that many of the elements do appear to have come in, whether it's on a panspermia or on meteors or other systems or planetary collisions or breakup of galaxies, you name it. There's so many ways in which it could have happened.
But could I first ask you, why ET exists? Definitely. There is nobody doubts about that. The NASA doesn't doubt about it. We only can't find them. That's the only thing. Yeah. But do you really think that ET is going to visit us?
Well, I mean, my sense is what kind of time period are we looking at? And does the 400 nanometer to 800 nanometer visual perception we have limit our ability to see energy? And I think from where I'm at with it is that I don't think that life always needs to exist in a physical form in which humans can perceive them. And I think, we're seeing a lot of movement now on disclosure projects from people, some controversial people like Stephen Greer and others. And yes, I think there's no doubt in my mind that governments, with NASA's help, for example, are getting the public ready for recognizing that we are far from alone. So that, I mean, that's my view in a nutshell, without any detail. How about yours?
I also completely agree that energy is not something we can determine with human words. I think that for the word that we use, the word energy, and we do not have other words to describe what it really is. Yeah, that's a problem of our vocabulary, but it doesn't mean it does not exist. If you say 400 nanometer till 800 nanometers, exactly, we can't see it. But we should also think not in microcosmos, but also in a macrocosmos. Yeah. Both parts are invisible for us.
But of course, one word that different cultures have used are words to the effect of God and source. In the electromagnetic area, we increasingly use terms like subtle energy below the level at which we can currently detect energy flows. And what we understand is that some of these very low energies can be extremely coherent. And the more we understand even about biochemical processes, the more we understand that there is a a biofield effect where certain gradients and control is happening at an energetic level before it happens at a measurable biochemical level. But it's so I think, Leo, would we be in agreement that a new frontier of medicine that we're moving into, but we are babes in the wood, is actually energy medicine? Do you think our current sort of genetic, molecular, biochemical view of medicine limits our perception and our ability to extract full potential from human beings?
We have to make a step forwards or backwards, whatever you want. But you can, when Dobzhansky said, you cannot understand evolution without biology.
Yeah.
And you cannot understand medicine without biology. That means you cannot understand medicine without evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
But it's all biochemistry. And there's one word failing and lacking, which is called physics. Yeah. And physics is much faster than biochemics. It's much smaller. Things on a physical level, they start on a non-visual view, and so you perhaps you can measure it, but we cannot even measure very small tumors. So how could we measure all those very, very small physical things? So
100%, yeah.
And that's why we have to add to Dobzhansky's definition the word quantum biology.
Yeah.
Which means
and biophysics. I mean,
biophysics. Quantum biophysics.
Yeah,
that's the word. That's the word. Yeah.
Exactly.
Quantum biophysics, and that means movements, because that's it. That's energy. Energy is nothing more and nothing less than movement, communication between protons, between antiprotons, but perhaps protons are not the smallest atoms, things in life. Perhaps there are even smaller things, not on a nanobiology level, but on a pico-nanobiology level, which is so small that we have nothing to measure that.
Yeah, scale is a limitation that we have. We have a problem with the scale is too macro or too micro, because we're not, and we have, yeah. Just tell me, on coming back to more conventional ideas of evolution and the role of viruses, you know, I'm fascinated by the fact that we could have had a global population put into a place of fear about one virus that largely, you know, everyone has agreed is likely to have emerged from gain of function research. However, we have hundreds of thousands of different viruses and many more to be discovered, many in the oceans, many in aerial and terrestrial environments. And we have mobile genetic elements as well, parts of viruses that seem to. Now, you know, the vast, I think out of these probably millions of different viruses, there are only about 200 that have ever been associated with disease. So we have to say most of the time they're benevolent, or they're, you know, mutualistic or commensal. Could they play an important role in evolution, this idea of genetic exchange between organisms?
Look, if you see the big smokers on the sea, in the depth of the deepest oceans, where incredible hot water comes out and reacts with the cold water with a very high pressure, that you can see there that elements are converted in a kind of a virus. Yeah. So it's not that difficult to understand. I think that there have to be, I don't think million, I think billions of viruses. If you see in Nepal, the glacier, which is disappearing, they already found in the disappearing ice 15 million different viruses. The SARS-CoV-2 thing, it's just one of those SARS-CoV viruses in that glacier. And we have been investigating. I really do not doubt that the SARS-CoV-2 virus comes from there, from from glaciers who conserve viruses, because viruses love cold and dryness.
So you don't think it came out of a bat cave and then was fiddled around and engineered in a Wuhan?
No, I think it comes from that glacier, and perhaps afterwards it has been manipulated. I don't know, but it has a natural origin, and why not? If you look at all the viruses we are discovering, is what you say. There are only a few producing illness. Now, look at your genes. 97% have a viral origin. Yeah. There is one moving around which is called Hermes, and that thing is responsible for the production of the placenta. Yes. And that has become a human mRNA virus, which is part of our DNA.
Yeah.
And what is happening with SARS-CoV-2? I don't know if you already have found that, but SARS-CoV-2 is capable of infiltrating our DNA.
Yes.
If people have been vaccinated 2 or 3 times and have suffered the disease 2 or 3 times, the probability that the virus is now part of their somatic DNA is very high.
Yes.
So the virus is searching for being a friend of ours. And
when we first reported on that, it was we were accused of releasing misinformation.
Yeah.
One of the things we were looking at very early on. Yes, absolutely. So obviously the virome becomes ever more important. We understand less about it than the microbiome that's associated with bacteria. When people become, of the 200 or so viruses that can create disease, obviously they don't always create disease in everyone. So they're not, obligate pathogens as such. Okay. So when we look at even the disease-causing viruses, do they have benefits as well in terms of building a stronger immune system, for example?
If you look at the people who are infected, and I don't know if that's the good word, are infiltrated by a virus which can produce disease in person X, but does not produce it in person Y, means that there has to be some benefit behind that infiltration. People who say that life is only life when it can proliferate independently, then they say that the virus is not a living thing, which I think is very, very, very far away from the truth. Because if you see the strategies with which viruses can hijack our immune system, that is intelligence. And energy, for me, is the same as intelligence. So they are intelligent.
It's not a random process, is it? There is a deliberate direction of communication, if you like. Yeah. I love that idea of talking about energy as a communication. So on that point, I think you and I have got a very similar view about the fact that when we look at health, we're looking at something that's a long way away from just the absence of disease, and resilience in its broader sense, physiological, psychological, metabolic, etc. Resilience is something we're looking for. And you're arguing that people are becoming less resilient. You talk about Homo sapiens fragilis versus Homo sapiens robusta. Can you just talk through what you think is actually happening in current day, modern life? Why are we becoming more fragile as a species?
Yeah, look, if we just look to the last 2,000 years, you don't have to look further back, and you see that only till 250 years ago, we had to adapt to evolution, to environmental changes. We've always adapted to that. We never, ever lived a life in which the environment was adapted to us. Homo sapiens did that. Homo sapiens changed the sequence of evolutionary biology, said, no, this is going to kill us. So what we have to do by intelligence, as if we were more intelligent, we turn it around. We produce an environment which is comfortable for us, which is really the highest purpose, the biggest purpose of evolution. Evolution, we want to survive and reproduce. And to be very honest, we have done that. It's incredible how intelligent we seemed to be. Let's say, but what we have done is we went over an edge. So, which means that now we lack all those triggers which made us anti-fragile. I don't think that the word resilient covers the content, because resilience has still an adaptive function. So it's not innovative. It is the use of old, already known survival strategies. But in evolutionary way of thinking, those changes, they happened through a period of 30,000 years, not in 2 years or 50 years. So we had time to adapt, and we developed, the organisms develop innovative solutions when they suffer more than 3 challenges at the same time. Look at how we treat bacteria. Look at how we treat cancer. They're all triple treatments nowadays. Because if you do not use a triple treatment, the bacteria is capable of escaping. So you need at least 3 treatments to prevent resistance. But the other way around is the same thing. If you suffer more than 2 challenges at the same time, you develop so-called energetic, innovative strategies. We are not doing that anymore because we don't suffer known problems, which we have always suffered, and which then produce those innovative metabolic strategies, energetic.
We've been, just to play devil's advocate, we've now had the arrival of technology. We've got the arrival of the digital age, and we've got levels of psychosocial stress that are probably off the scale in terms of what we met. But are you suggesting that the time available and the change in the kind of stresses that we're exposed to means that if we look at the rise in incidence of mental health challenges amongst the younger population, that would be an indicator that we're not well adapted to this environment? So you're saying essentially there hasn't been enough time, and then the nature of the stressor keeps changing, so we can't innovate around it.
If you look at the type of challenge, they have got nothing to do with survival, nothing. And if it's got nothing to do with survival, you are not going to adapt. Those changes we suffer from now, they only produce disease. But we die at 60 years of age, so you don't need any evolutionary adaptation, because we already reproduced. So that's why they are not challenges. They are distress factors. They don't make us stronger. The thing is, they are a kind of a psychological trauma. A psychological trauma, because it's the following thing: we don't think anymore because of thinking. But if it, if it affects young people, then it affects their ability to form relationships and then have families. I mean, we're looking at some of the demographics and the population statistics and fertility statistics that are emerging.
there's a disturbing trend that's beginning that could have a survival impact, but we're really measuring it over the last few years.
Good thing. But but it will still take a few thousand years.
Yes, exactly.
And
so,
I don't want my kids. I don't want my kids to be part of that evolutionary competition.
yes,
Because the thing is, they will be ill. They have to become ill. They have to become infertile. They have to die at time, not too late. Yeah, and then we could adapt in an accelerating way. But perhaps we can do the same thing without the need to suffer disease, without the need becoming infertile, because perhaps we can use triggers, challenges, which is a vaccine against modern life.
Yeah. You've made an interesting point. A lot of people are confused by the relationship between lifespan and evolutionary success or robustness of our species. Mainstream medicine keeps on saying, look, we've achieved a longer life than ever, but you've just made that point. Could you just sort of reinforce that the two are entirely separate things? I think what you're also saying is if you take a modern day human and put them in a Paleolithic environment, they wouldn't do so well.
No, they don't survive. Yeah.
And that's what you mean by robustness. That's the kind of robustness. And let's flip it. Can we build a degree? Will our genotype, is there enough information within us to be able to transform our outcomes so that we can all become more robust?
I think that robustness is a plan, which is the default plan. That is how it should be, because otherwise crocodiles would never have survived 500 million years. Yeah, they're still there, and that means they have to be crocodile robustness, and so that we are here means that we are definitely robust. We should be robust. But what happened with the robustness is, if you don't use it, you lose it. So that means we have a lack of using the need of robustness. Yeah. And so it's not that difficult to reactivate a default plan, because it's a default plan. Yeah. Nevertheless, the hypothesis that we only change 0.1% at a genetic level in the last million years, that is perhaps true, but it is not true that means that we haven't changed. If you see the genes that changed, that were only 27 genes, it's not more. But if you look at those genes, then you see, wow, no, they have made a huge impact in a new species. So I don't believe at all that we are still Paleolithic. Not at all. We really have become Homo sapiens robustus, not Homo fragilis, not Homo erectus. We are different species, and we are not able to survive circumstances, and it doesn't matter which we had to survive before. But that is not important. What is important is, how can we reactivate the robust phenotype in a modern society in which quite a few, let's say, health attacking risk factors are out of our influence. I would love to have influence on air pollution, but the thing is, I am now sitting in a garage and I'm inspiring an enormous amount of nanoparticles, but it does not affect me, I know for sure, but because I've become more robust again.
Yes. No, look, fantastic. The mainstream medical system and public health like to talk about this idea of disease prevention. That's what we're kind of shooting for. Some of us are sensing that if we focus on that disease prevention and we use markers, disease-based markers, we actually don't create health. We don't regenerate health. From your perspective, how different are these strategies? We get some people saying, look, I think you're just using different words for the same thing. But from a CPNI, a clinical psychoneuroimmunology perspective, can we regenerate health, and do we do this in a different way from the kind of standard public health disease prevention approaches that are out there?
Yeah, I think that the best thing is to just use an example. If you look at the IARC, the cancer risk factors, they say red meat is cancerous. And they say, so to prevent this cancer, you should not eat red meat. And then I ask, is that true? Okay, that is perhaps cancer prevention in an environment in which that red meat is perhaps not so good. But let's turn it around. To stay healthy, the first thing you have to take care of is a very healthy brain. If you do not nourish the brain with all the essential things it needs, then you cannot even prevent disease. So to stay healthy, then the first thing is use nutrition as a structural way of thinking. So without meat, we would have a lack of arachidonic acid. And people say, oh, but then you eat plants. Now we cannot produce arachidonic acid from plant oil. So if you look at that, then at once that red meat is not cancerous anymore. No, it maintains health, which is not the same as prevent disease.
Good point, because so many people are locked into this notion that red meat exists as a protein source, not as a fatty acid source. From there, what are your views on lab-grown meat?
Look, if I look to wild meat like deer and even the black boar, of which we in Spain make jamón de jabugo, and we look to a gnu and a kangaroo, there's a very interesting thing. One of the substances in red meat, but only in red meat, which we have grown, which we have domesticated, there is a level of a sugar which is called NOI5GC. That sugar, when it reaches a certain amount in red meat, definitely produces a postprandial inflammatory response, without any doubt. That it has been proven in healthy and non-healthy people. Then you let people eat kangaroo, and you let people eat deer, and there is no inflammatory response at all. Why? Because the NOI5GC level is so low that it doesn't affect us. And what is logical is that we have eaten that. If we start agriculture and start domesticate cows, goats, sheep, and pigs, and we measure the level of NOI5GC in those 4 animals, they are incredible high. You know what that means at an evolutionary level? We have never eaten them. We have used them for the milk. We have used them as our pets, but we have never eaten them. It's impossible that we have started eating them. So we started eating them much when we killed all big mammals. And then we said, okay, now we're going to eat our pets. Those animals,
because they were easy to domesticate.
Of course, they were easy to domesticate. Those animals, we should drink the non-pasteurized milk of them, because that's how they were in our benefit and we were in their benefit. That was a good thing. But if you do not eat red meat from a wild source, you're really going to have problem in the development and the function of your brain. Start with in this life, we can do all kind of things, but make it stupidly simple, as Einstein already said. So first make your nutrition your medicine. But it's about nutrition. It's also not about all the supplements, because that's nutrition. That is not nutrition. First nutrition, and then let's see what's more needed. That's also a CP&I view.
This is also the reason that you take people into the Pyrenees and get them to hunt for their own wild animals to eat them.
For instance,
in the wild. Yeah.
And we have to kill them ourselves.
Yeah.
So and that is a feeling for a lot of people. They are trembling. They're trembling. They've never killed an animal they eat. Yeah. But it's such it makes people so the experience is so beneficial. You cannot imagine.
So we can summarize on that point, saying, right, factory farming always a problem, and guess what? We're eating the wrong species.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's a good resume. Yes,
fantastic. So when we look at the idea of mainstream medicine has developed, particularly since the organic chemistry revolution in the post-World War period, where drug companies could essentially patent molecules, new to nature molecules, and we now have a system where there are, so-called essential medicines out there. The WHO has got a list of them. They had a list they developed in 1977. I think the most recent update is 2021. But bottom line is, what we can also think about essential vitamins that we need to ingest in our food because our bodies can't make it. They're using this term essential around medicines, and most people who go to a general practitioner get given some kind of new to nature, often patented medicine. Now, have we got to a stage where we've become so fragile that some of these medicines genuinely meet an unmet human health need? Okay. Or is the whole thing irrelevant?
So is this a commercial thing or a health thing?
Well, it's if we were to remove tomorrow all the drugs that ever existed, including all of WHO's essential medicines, we have a catastrophe, or would human beings find, do we have the strategies available to us and the environments available to us to provide all the needs that we have without those medicines?
I think that you're asking a question which are four sub questions. So I'm going to answer those sub questions because the question is big.
Yeah.
The only way to find out is doing the following thing: is comparative medicine between us and people who still live a human life, and see what challenges they survive and how do they survive them. Yeah, compared with us. Yeah, but it's a very difficult comparison because we live in a very toxic environment and they live in another environment. Yeah, so it's not a real comparison.
You're looking at people who still live in indigenous sort of tribal societies, for example.
Like the Yanomami Indians in the Amazons, or the Bushmen. I've been in Botswana with the Bushmen, and they really live very, very nearby, those Bushmen to our original life. If you see them, they are incredibly healthy. But if they're ill, they do something. It's not all spontaneous curing. If they're ill, if they have diarrhea, if they have an infection, and they have a lot of infections, they search for plants and herbs to cure themselves. So the use of nature as a medicine is nothing new. I definitely know that aunts who get ill, they also search for all kind of micro substances to cure the whole tribe. So looking for medicine is nothing new. I think that's part of evolutionary biology.
But they are also, if you like, more epigenetically adapted to those kind of environments. You could argue that we are perhaps more epigenetically adapted to this modern day polluted, contaminated, crazy world that we live in. Yeah. And is that why we actually need some of the medicines? Ironically, the WHO say they need a lot of those medicines to use in places like sub-Saharan Africa, Southern Asia, South America.
That is the opposite, of course, but because that is obviously a beautiful market of innocent people, of naive people who think that paracetamol is better than using a herb. But the word essential would mean young people, healthy people with a flu, with some infection. Do they need a medicine? Probably not. Yeah. But there is one thing we should not forget: is people become too old, and for me that is too old. And then there is a moment that that tissue is not. You cannot recover it anymore. Terminal state of diseases. There, perhaps, those medicines are essential, but not for the maintenance or the recovery of health. No, just for postponing death.
So we have a big problem in society in the sense that there's still very few people who live, if you like, an industrialized lifestyle, who are able to think that the real medicine relates to their behavior, their choices, what they're eating, how they're choosing to rest or sleep or recreate or interact with other people or manage stress. That's the real medicine. And that is, of course, a big part of what you are teaching in clinical psychoneuroimmunology, is it not?
We talk about the big 13. A few years ago, it was big 8, then it became big 10, and now it's big 13. Yeah. Things, such a small little thing like naturalizing, which is it's a word with an incredible content, because it only means that when you once in a while enjoy a forest, then you already are more protected against an enormous amount of diseases. Naturalizing. You can never compensate the benefit of nature with whatever so-called essential medicine. Yeah. Nature is essential. Medicines are a therapy, which is not the same thing. Yeah. So I don't need to be healthy. I don't need any medicine. But I don't even need a supplement. I only need to take care of the big 13. Naturalize, socialize, think once in a while, feel, and give yourself permission, sleep, eat, and breathe. Yeah? And perhaps only 3 of the big 13 needs therapy. I'm going to give you one example. Light pollution. Light pollution is the most important cause of restless legs and Parkinson. 2 big diseases which are becoming pandemic, which is logical because there is no darkness anymore. Yeah. There is hardly Parkinson in Patagonia and the south of Argentina. You know why? There's no light pollution. So how can we get rid of the light pollution? We cannot do that anymore with only lifestyle interventions, because of the fact that the light pollution is so big that if you do not use blue filter glasses, which is a medicine, which is a therapy, the light is going to affect all kind of parts of your health. So that's a therapeutic need, but it does not mean that I need a month to go to sleep. No, I
mean,
use,
that is a lovely separation, and I think what we're saying here is that the use essential by the WHO is misleading. But you're absolutely right. Therapy. So let's go on to looking at what we're doing to our children in terms of building that incredibly sophisticated immune system. The view is that we need to be shooting them up with, ever more vaccines. The technology, the platforms being used for them is changing. We've now got, DNA recombinant technology. We're moving into mRNA as a technology. Does the same thinking apply, that we should just be rolling our kids around in the dirt and allowing them to mix and share their microbiomes with one another? Or are we so weak that there is some value in priming, which is the view that's taken, the immune system with childhood vaccines?
If you see the so-called hygiene hypothesis, which many people interpret completely wrong, because the hygiene hypothesis does not mean that you should not wash yourself anymore. You still have to wash yourself. And if you live in a city like New York, it is good once in a while to use soap. Really, believe me, because all the nanoparticles in your skin, if they penetrate, come in your brain, that's not good for you. That's not good for yourself. Rather not. So once in a while, wash yourself is a good thing. That's not about hygiene. Hygiene means the lack of contact with old friends, like an old friend. Like Helminth, and an old friend like Streptococcus misis from a forest. An old friends, we lack old friends, and what we have done is, because of crowding humans, an enormous amount of new and I do it like this: enemies are now part of our natural environment. Okay, so how strong, how fast are human beings to recognize, let's say, a possible pathogenic microorganism, and how fast can human beings develop an immune response which is more than enough to save our life and not to become ill. And COVID-19 has shown us something which makes a lot of sense. Nobody would have needed any vaccine if the following would have happened. One person is contaminated, doesn't matter, get fever, that's good for him, good for her, and I have contact with that person. If I would have developed next day symptoms, there would not have been one problem at all, because it is not true that there is something like an incubation time. That is an old, wrong word in immunology, because it does not exist. It is not true that we need 7 days to acquire activity of the adaptive immune system. That's not true. This is about hours. So a normal, non-fragile person can mount new antibodies in 24 hours without any problem. And
they
then
do that on the innate side of their immune system, which I think
no. It's about a cell type, which is the bridge between the innate and the acquired immune system. That cell type is so incredible fast, but so much down-regulated metabolically in modern humans, that the response is too weak and too slow. And
Is
then,
it on dendritic cells and toll-like receptors, that
no,
area?
it's called the invariable natural killer cell,
Okay.
which is an innate cell with an acquired receptor, a T cell receptor. And that thing is in minutes in the infection. The only thing is, to respond in a specific way, it needs an enormous amount of energy, but an enormous amount of energy. Therefore, you need metabolic permission. The permission given is by leptin. So if you then suffer before that you have to face such a virus, a low-grade inflammatory state because of cytokine resistance, then you cannot mount such a really benign, very beneficial response with high fever, and everybody is happy because you come out of it like a very strong, long-living human. So the resume is, are we too fragile to survive new pathogens? The word is, and I'm going to refer to half an hour ago, the default plan is the opposite. The default plan is that we, at time, mount the right response. But for that, we need to make people less fragile. And if we are not making them less fragile, perhaps the vaccine can help a little bit. That's
interesting viewpoint. So the big 13, those ideas, non-pharmaceutical support of the body, are generally, partitioned off into the field of public health.
Yes.
So, primary, secondary, tertiary healthcare can engage with what you're calling therapy. How does that model work? How would we recreate a model that would work better for people to get better outcomes? Because the public health model is generally built around the response of whole populations, and we're all different, and we all have lived in different environments, and our genes are expressing differently. How do we balance this so that we can have not just an effect on the small number of people that are studying and benefiting from clinical psychoneuroimmunology, but how can we benefit this to create a sea change that actually allows humans to re-engage with health systems that actually work for us?
If you look at worldwide in developed countries, the governments using lifestyle medicine as preventing part of let's say public health politics, then the first thing where things go wrong is the fact that the way you transfer knowledge has to be personalized, and it cannot be universal because of one simple thing: how far people still have their free will when, for instance, at the level of the hypothalamus, they suffer leptin and insulin resistance. Believe me, then the primitive brain takes over. You get bottom-up behavior and not top-down behavior. So if then a government comes with a beautiful plan, the people say, very interesting, but I'm not even capable of doing it. If I don't eat 7 times a day, I do not have energy in my brain, I can't work. Now, so that's not the way to transfer knowledge. What you say, public health is public, the solution is individual. Start with universal transfer of knowledge, which is not information, because information is the internet is full of information. I really talk about knowledge. You can transfer knowledge in a public way. You don't need to individualize that. Knowledge transfer. How can we make people comply? And the first thing you have to do is get rid of the feeling of guilt. So many people feel guilty. They say, I'm not disciplined. I cannot maintain my diet. I know I have to exercise, but I'm not able to because my body does not give permission, and they feel guilty. Guilt is the best way to stop moving. So all those wrong political ways to make people moving, because it's about moving, it's about making decisions, are based on fear. There's nothing worse. Yeah, there's not a worse way to produce compliance than the use of fear.
We learned a lot about that over the last 3 years.
Exactly, and we've seen that that does not function. So I do not agree that lifestyle medicine, the Big 13, is not a universal project. It is universal, and then 80%. We can do, all of us. 80% is not a problem, and that other 20% that gives therapists a reason of living. Because if we do everything with a lifestyle intervention, which is possible, then we would not have physicians anymore, no therapists anymore, and we also have to eat. So let's use those 20% for the professional and the 80% for using knowledge transfer.
Right. Well, that means the knowledge transfer has to be the right kind of knowledge transfer, and that's something that absolutely you're engaged with clinical psychoneuroimmunology. We're engaged with it as a non-profit, and we're talking, while we might have a few differences of opinion, the basic thrust, and particularly putting nature at the heart of it and understanding our relationship with old friends. The system is absolutely critical, but we still have the bulk of mainstream medical doctors, I think, being taught the wrong thing. If we start looking at how we need to restructure education, particularly in medicine, what does that look like going forward? Think next few decades. How can we do that? Do you think there will automatically come a point where the wisdom of humankind will get the better of the profit-driven motives that have turned a lot of certainly general practitioners into drug company sales reps?
The change is not by re-educating the doctors. The change is by educating the end consumer. It is the demand producing the change, and not the change producing the demand. The niche is there. People are fed up with all kind of specialist treatments. People know that if they have a high blood pressure and skin problems and depression and cannot sleep, that they have to have something to do with each other. So they're fed up. But so much that a lot of people are now searching for pseudo scientists. Yeah. And that's a pity, because we have in the complementary so-called alternative part of health, in the health system, fantastic professionals, but they are mixed with pseudo scientists. So what's happening is that the people, they have lost their brain. They don't know where to go anymore. It is one hell of a chaotic world, yeah, in which nobody knows where he or she wants to belong to. We were together at the Congress of Integrative Medicine, and I asked the organizer, look, it is full of stats with all kind of supplements. Why did you not invite Johnson & Johnson? Why did you not invite GlaxoSmithKline? And he said, no. I said, but this is exactly the problem. If you polarize, polarizing is good. Polarizing is good to change something. But you have to start a real discussion. Feminism was a need to produce the conflict and to start to discuss all those stupid things men, not women, invented about gender, that there would be a man and women and all kind, that the difference would be so big. Now we know that that is a thing which is imposed by men. There is not so many difference between women and men as we think. The same here. If we want to change something, then we should revolutionize the end consumer, and they are capable of producing the change.
No, that's fantastic. Leo, it has been amazing to talk to you. I think a lot of people who are listening to this, both sides of the pond, are going to be really interested. We're going to have links to what your institute is now teaching in the field of clinical psychoneuroimmunology. Just very briefly, you've talked about the importance of the end consumer. Do you need to be a practitioner to sign up for one of your courses? What are the entry requirements?
Look, it is our study is an official master of the Pontifical University of Salamanca. So the master title you can only get if you have a medical or paramedical background. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, the people are interested in the materia, and if they, although they perhaps they are naturopath, which I don't know if our university is going to accept, doesn't matter. If they do not have a bachelor, but they are nutritionist, or in England, a lot of natural therapists, they are welcome, obviously. And the end consumer is also welcome, but cannot get the master title, obviously.
But they can run the course. And how long does the course run for?
It is, it are in total 18 modules. Of a few of them are 4 days, immunology, diagnostics, and the P and the P&I, and the other one are 3 days. It's hybrid, so that means the first 6 days are always live. The first international course is going to start in London next year, but every year we will do the first 6 days in another city, wherever over the world, in Sydney, in New York, in Abu Dhabi, because we want to. We are already in 16 countries. Now, this is the first time that we're going to do the international course. And we want to reach out to all English-speaking people worldwide.
It's very exciting. And will people get a chance to go hunt wild animals and eat them with you?
Of course, because we have the intermittent living project. We do that in Peru, in Patagonia, in Sweden, in Spain, and a lot of it's an incredible project. And the only thing I can say is, if you have done it once, you want that reset every year, because it is really a change of living.
Fantastic. Leo, it's been amazing to talk to you as always, and we look forward to working more together as we move forward in this huge reorganization of how humans do healthcare.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert, and I hope that we have another discussion soon.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.